Oh, hey young people of First Church of Lacey. I didn't expect to see you in my kitchen today, but what a blessing. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite recipes, and it always gets rave reviews, but the first thing I want you to do is get your parents' permission. There's going to be heat from the oven and from the stovetop. You're going to be using both. So the first thing I want you to do is make sure you find an adult and get permission. Let them know what you're going to be doing. But hey, after that, don't tell them everything you're doing. Don't tell them all the ingredients, because this recipe is going to knock people's socks off. And the more they know about how you did it, the less miraculous it will seem. So don't give them any details. Just say, hey, I'm going to do this and this. If you smell smoke or you see fire, come running. Otherwise, you stay out! When adults taste it, they're going to be like, how'd you make that? And you're going to have to be like, I have power you don't understand. This thing is going to be so good. It's going to be maybe the only thing you ever make. The only thing that ever comes out of your kitchen might be this cobbler. Could you imagine your grocery list if all you made was cobbler? Mom, I need 48 more pounds of butter.
What you need is to get a job.
Flour, sugar, a fruit, milk, a 9x9 pan, some smaller measuring cups for teaspoons and tablespoons, a 1 cup measuring cup, and a 1/4 cup measuring cup. Really, you should have a 1/2 cup measuring cup. I can't find mine. So we're going to use 2 1/4 cups, which makes, yeah,
I studied in school.
it makes a half. We'll do all that. It'll take about a total of 35 to 40 minutes, depending on your oven. Everybody's a little different. You also have some options here on the fruit that you want to use. Really, any fruit will do, because we're going to cook it down on the stovetop, and we'll get it down to a real thick syrup with that sugar and the fruit. So whatever fruit you use is fine. Just remember, the firmer the fruit that you pick, the longer you want to cook it on that stovetop to reduce it down. I picked blackberries because, one, my family loves blackberries, but 2, I grew up eating this cobbler, and I've got it memorized by heart. I could just tell you all the ingredients and how to cook it just like that. Where is that recipe? I know I saved it. So we love blackberries. And when I was a little kid, we didn't have it, they probably had it, but we weren't going to spend any money on it because we had blackberry bushes everywhere. And so a good part of my summers when we wanted Blackberry Cobbler was out in the back fields picking these things. And there's sticker bushes everywhere, and you know, your hands, they turn completely purple. You know, my mom would tell us to wear gloves, but we're kids, and I'm a young boy. I'm not going to wear gloves. So mom's telling us to wear gloves, but my hands are completely purple. And by the end of the day, all the stickers had really gotten into my fingers, so there'd be blood and there would be purple hands. And you know, as a little boy, I would just imagine that I was some barbarian in the midst of war. That was just a daydream of mine, but I can tell you that no matter what blackberries I buy in the store, it'll never be as good as those blackberries we picked as a kid. And it's not just the freshness, it's that it cost us something. It was all day out there in the back pastures and bleeding hands and purple fingers and wanting to do other things, but I knew if I really wanted that best cobbler, it was going to cost me something. And so when it came time to eat that cobbler, it wasn't just the taste that I was experiencing, it was the satisfaction of sticking something out and seeing it through to the end and sacrificing for something. And that makes it so much more enjoyable. And young people, that's going to be a lesson for you in the entirety of life. If someone just gave you the keys to a Ferrari or a brand new mansion or even $1 million, that thing would mean so much less, and you would take so much less care of it and respect for those things if you didn't sacrifice to get them. We see that all through life. Young people, you'll see it in your marriages. You'll see it in your jobs. You'll see it in your families. You'll see it in parenting. You'll even see it in being a young person today and trying to be that young man or young woman that your parents are trying to raise you to be. It takes sacrifice, but I'll tell you, once you get that marriage, once you get those kids, once you get that relationship with your parents, once you're an adult, it'll be so valuable because you knew it cost you something, and it will be with you because you'll take care of it, and it's worth sticking out. Now these, they cost me about $3. So no cuts, no bruises, but still, $3 is a lot of money.
I'm in the money.
So we'll go through the ingredients. Now, the flour, it's going to save you a lot of time if you already have self-rising flour. Not everybody's kitchen has self-rising flour, but it's a super easy thing and you can whip it up right away. You can take regular flour and then a little bit of baking powder and a little bit of salt. 1.5 teaspoons and a half a teaspoon of salt to 1.5 cups of flour. Now, teaspoons and tablespoons can be confusing because when they abbreviate them, one of them says TSB, TBS, and one of them says TSP. The TSP is the one you want. That's teaspoon. If you have a tablespoon, that's significantly bigger. And instead of adults and everyone that's trying your cobbler, they're saying, "Oh, that's so good," you will be at the oven saying,
It's alive!
and you don't want to be saying it's alive. You want people to be impressed, so make sure that you use the TSP when you measure that baking soda and flour. Next thing you're going to need is sugar. White sugar is all you're going to need. You can use brown sugar when you're making your fruit portion of it on the stove, but if you want to keep it simple and you want to keep it streamlined, just grab some white sugar, some milk, and butter. Now, I would tell you, you use what is available to you. That's also another one of these lessons that's always going to be with you in life. You're not always going to have everything readily available to you to make everything exactly perfect or the ingredients that you would like to make a situation better. But just because you don't have everything you need, or at least everything you think you need, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. So if you don't have all these ingredients, we're going to figure it out together. And as you grow older and as you become deeper and deeper in this faith, you'll see there will be times to where it just doesn't seem like you've got what it takes. But I can tell you there are some ingredients that will always be with you, and they're all you need. For us, it's Jesus Christ. It's our salvation, and it's God's Spirit that dwells in us. For this recipe, it's butter. We need butter. Don't substitute. Don't go with margarine or any Crisco, anything like that. Get yourself some salted, real butter. First thing we're going to do, first step is we're going to clear off this countertop and we're going to start baking. Give me half a second. Okay, first step, butter. Just take out your whole stick of butter and you want to put it on your pan. Take that butter, don't do anything with it. Just put it right in that pan, and this is where the parents are going to be watching because we're going to the stove. I've already got it preheated at 375, and I'm going to put this in there and just let the whole thing get hot and that butter just liquefy. Okay, once that butter is liquefying, what you want to do is we're going to work on that fruit and sugar reduction. So grab your fruit, whatever you picked, and remember, if it's something firm like an apple or a pear, cut that up into smaller chunks and it'll reduce down quicker rather than just putting a whole half of an apple or a whole half of a pear in there. So like I said, we're going to use blackberries and we're just going to dump them right in the pan. Be very, very careful with this. That you don't want to spill anything anywhere and you don't want your parents yelling at you. So do it just like I do it. So that worked fine. All the blackberries into the pot. What we're going to do is put that on a medium heat. 4 or 5 if you go by numbers. Right on the stove top, and we're going to start reducing that down. Okay, so why is that is cooking down on the stove. We're going to go ahead and start with our dry and wet ingredients we're going to put together to make our crust. First, we'll start with our flour, and I did not have self-rising flour, so if you were going to be making it, you're going to watch me make it the exact way that you need to do it. So take your cup measurement, and now if you're going to do some pastries, I know you have to do measurements and really exact. Cobbler is so forgiving. So it's a great recipe to start out with as a young person. If you're not super experienced in the kitchen, there's plenty of leeway for a little bit too much or a little bit too little of most any of these ingredients. So we're not going to be super exact. We're going to get that first cup measurement, kind of level it off on the top of there, put that into the measuring cup. Now I'm going to grab my quarter cup because I can't find my half-inch cup or half cup. What? Don't you ever correct me. We're going to grab this quarter-inch cup because two of those make half a cup. Take one. Two. You guys probably don't know that. That was Sesame Street. That was when I was growing up. You guys have, I know from watching my girls, way newer and cooler cartoons, but I can't do impersonations of any of those. Okay, we've got our flour in there, and now we're going to make it self-rising flour. We're going to take our baking powder, and you remember we're going to go 1 1/2. So if you look at your baking powder, most all of them have kind of that cut off on the top. And what that is for is baking powder is something like we discussed earlier, you really want to be exact with. So when you scoop in there, that level is to take the top of that cup and pull it right across there to make your scoop even. So I'll show you. This is the 1/2 teaspoon. And I grab that and just level it off. There you go. That's 1/2. Count with me. Another half makes a whole. And another half makes... Edit! Onto the salt. Now we want to grab, I got kosher salt here. Table salt's fine. Doesn't really matter. It's all going to melt down in there. And remember, just a 1/2 teaspoon here. So just one of these guys. Right in there. And we're 1 whisk away from making our own self-rising flour. Okay, we've got our newly, freshly minted, right off of the press, self-rising flour. And all we add to that is 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup, and I like diabetes, so I add a little bit more. Let's go ahead and incorporate. That's a nice word. They use that a lot on like cooking shows and stuff like that, or like business shows, incorporation. It just means to like put everything together and make a bunch of things that were separate into one. It's a lot like when we get the Holy Ghost. We go into those moments in life, you know, separate, and a lot of times what drives us, even as young people, is that feeling of being separated, of being alone. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that getting the Holy Ghost and learning to know God. You hear those poems about footprints in the sand, and you've got a new partner in life, or God is my pilot or my co-pilot, however that stuff goes. And I just think that shows a little bit of misunderstanding. I think incorporation is much more of what we become into the kingdom. We're no longer an individual linked up with something else. We become part of that whole. Just like this baking soda and salt is no longer on its own. It's now one thing, self-rising flour. And for us, when we come out of those waters, we get incorporated. It's no longer Bobby Anderson or Priscilla Anderson or Michael Gurley or Judy Crawford. You have a new name and a new identity. Today, it's self-rising flour. Okay, so we've got our sugar, we've got our self-rising flour, and now we're going to add our milk. We'll do our 1 cup first. Now normally if you guys weren't looking, I would just pour about half of that 1 cup and say, hey, that's half a cup. But I know the comments would be just decimating me. So I'll do 2 of the 1/4 to get the half. And it's going to use that word again. Let's incorporate it all together and make batter. The consistency of your batter, it still should be soupy. It shouldn't turn into a dough like pizza dough or any bread dough. It should be able to be poured a lot closer to pancake batter if you know that consistency. So you just kind of sit here and stir for a while.
Oh, my arm is gonna fall off! Are we done yet?
Okay. Okay, we got it all done. Everything looks exactly the way it should look. I don't know if you can see well in there, but that's exactly the consistency, that kind of pancake batter consistency. I can hear those blackberries reducing down back there, so I'm going to grab a spoon. We're going to start stirring it around, and we're going to add our sugar into the berries. So we're going to use a total of 2 cups of sugar on this recipe. 1 cup, if you remember, we already put in that dry flour and then mixed it all in and incorporated it. So now we're going to take another cup and we're going to put that another cup of sugar into these berries and reduce that down, and we're going to be very close to getting a cobbler. We've got a real nice soupy, you still got some chunks of your berries in there is what you want. You don't want it to be all complete liquid, because this is still going to continue to cook down, absorb into that batter a little bit, and just create a really nice bottom layer that's enjoyable, made of your favorite fruit. So that's ready to go. Now, here's the next dangerous part. We're getting back into that hot oven, and we're going to grab that dish that we put in there with that butter, and if everything went right, that butter shouldn't be butter. Right there. So the butter is all completely melted down, and there's a little bit of technique to this to make it turn out perfectly. So just listen and watch, and you'll get it right the first time, I'm sure. Leave that butter sit just like it is. Remember that pan's hot, so don't grab it and try to move it around. What you're going to do is you're going to take that batter that you just made, and you're going to pour it around in there, and do not mix it. What did he say? What did he say?
Don't mix it!
What did he say? Wait, what did you say?
Don't mix it!
So don't mix it. Take it, pour it around, not all in one spot. You want to kind of just do it in a square motion or circle motion, whatever the shape of your pan is. Try to get it as even as you can everywhere without having to shake it around. So once that's done, that is going to do all you need to do for the crust of your cobbler. Now this is the part that people mess up on, and it gets confusing. You want that berry on the bottom of your cobbler. You don't want it on the top. What's going to happen is that self-rising flour is going to come up and around, envelop those berries, and create a buttery, awesome crust. So what you want to do is take this mixture that you made and just kind of dump it around. Not all in one spot again. Definitely not all in the middle, because that's going to take the longest to cook, and you do want this stuff to cook down really well. So just kind of move it around, and once you get it, this is what you're going to have, and you're going to see it looks nothing like a cobbler. There you go. It's just soupy, and it doesn't look like it's going to be much. But that is the whole reason I'm making this video. It's for you guys. First Church of Lacey kids. We're in a really weird time. Things are strange, and adults are seeing things we've never seen before. Even though we act like we've got it all together, it would be crazy to act like things aren't different, and there's certain new challenges for you young people. And it might be that you look to your future, or you might look to your present, just like we talked about those ingredients, and it just doesn't seem like you have what it takes. Hey, I know it doesn't seem like life is fair. I know that some of you are not raised with a mother and a father in the home. I know that some of you face struggles that I can't even imagine. When I was young, the biggest temptations we had were Saturday morning cartoons, or what I could find on regular cable television when my parents weren't watching. But I know, young people, I know that with just one click of this button, when you're watching this video, you can go and see things I could never have dreamed of at your age. And there is a new temptation, and there's new rules to this game, it seems like, for your generation. And I know that when you're in church, it seems like the preachers are talking only to the adults and how do they thrive in this time in 2020 and the coronavirus. But it seems like it all just kind of goes over your head, or no one's speaking to you, or they just expect the adults are going to figure it out and thrive during this time. But I just want to tell you one thing that's undeniable. When God made you, He knew what time and what generation you would be born. He knew when He thought of you and created you that you would be alive and called upon during this time. And just like this cobbler, it doesn't seem like that makes sense. It seems like, hey, all the ingredients are there, but it doesn't look like a cobbler. You might feel like you're just not equipped to do something world changing, your family changing in this time. But I can tell you, the only ingredient that this cobbler is missing to change it from just a bunch of ingredients to what the master had in mind is heat, it's stress, and it's pressure. But the ingredients are there in that self-rising flour to rise up, and it won't happen without the heat. And when God created you for this time, the ingredients are there. There was no guesswork. He had all the best ingredients, everything at his disposal, and his mind thought of you and every ingredient that you would need to be successful in this time. And the only way to bring it out of you, young people, I'm sorry, it's heat, it's stress, it's these times. But these times are what you are made for. No other generation could have had the success that you will have. Not me, not your parents, not your grandparents. We would fail because you are specifically tailored for this time. In quarantine, you can talk on the internet to your friends about the latest show on Netflix, whatever's going on outside, how sad you are because you can't do this, or how sad you are you can't do that. But I'm telling you, let yourself feel that heat. The ingredients are in you. And God has a plan for you, not to just stay a mix of a bunch of talent and ideas, but someone who focuses all those talents and ideas that God put in you for this time, 2020, that you in your teen years, before your teen years, you can make a difference in this world. Not by happenstance, but because God chose you to be born in this time. And the ingredients are there. We're going to put you in the oven. I'm sorry. But it's going to make you the best. 45 minutes. So now all you got to do is sit and wait. Young people, I'm really glad that if you took time to watch this video and listen to what I had to say, I hope you learned how to make a cobbler. And I'd love to see some pictures of it. Better yet, I'd love to taste some of them. But what I really hope, above your enhanced cooking skills, and you'll be the rave of all the church potlucks, what I really hope is that you heard what I was really trying to say to you. This church loves you. This church supports you. This church praying for you, even though you might not feel it every moment. At school, or right now in the absence of school, lonely moments, doubt, insecurity about what the future holds for you. You might look around and say it just doesn't seem fair. You don't have all the ingredients. I'm here to tell you you do. One of those ingredients, I promise you, is support from this church, from this family. We love you. We're praying for you. Now bake me some cobbler!